deterring China, that to come up with a sustainable plan to get our Navy in shape to deter war with China and other places, I think we got to look at sort of modernization OCO. I want to have a bipartisan discussion about to give you the ships and the things you need to win the wars we hope we never have to fight by deterring them. So let's go to Ukraine right quick. General Austin, you said that Ukraine is a vital national security interest of the United States. How that ends, do you agree? That if we lose in Ukraine, pull the plug on Ukraine, we'll send a signal of weakness.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, Senator. I agree with that.
And General Brown, I'm sure you agree too.
I do agree.
I totally agree. There are people on our side, Senator Collins will tell you, we hear from all the time. Just, you know, it doesn't matter, pull the plug on Ukraine. All due respect, you're wrong, in my view. So I'm going to keep supporting Ukraine. Now, you just confirmed that that we're delaying transfer or stopping transfer of certain weapons like 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Is that correct?
What I
Secretary
said,
Austin.
we're assessing
Okay.
where
Okay.
we are right now.
Well, there are media reports that it's happened. Are they incorrect?
That we have made a decision to.
Yeah.
Again, we've made no decisions.
Okay.
We're assessing.
Are you worried that if you make a decision to deny weapons that Israel say they need, that it would send a signal to Hamas and Iran to keep pushing?
Senator, we want to make sure that we're providing the right kinds of weaponry.
Okay. Would you have supported dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, General Brown, in World War II?
Well, Senator, I think it's just based on the situation where
Well, we know. I mean, it's happened. We know. I'm not asking that they did it. Do you think that was disproportionate?
it was definitely.
Well, do you, in hindsight, do you think that was the right decision for America to drop 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities in question?
Well, I'll tell you, it stopped the World War.
Okay. Well, so we had a. Do you agree, General Austin? If you'd been around, would you say drop them?
I agree with the chairman here.
I mean, if we go back in time, says, hey, we got 2 atomic bombs, should we drop them? What would you say?
Well, I think the leadership was interested in curtailing the.
Well, what's Israel interested in? Do you believe Iran really wants to kill all the Jews if they could? The Iranian regime, yeah. Do you believe Hamas is serious when they say we'll keep doing it over and over again? Do you agree that they will if they can?
I do. Hamas,
okay, right. Do you believe that
Palestinians.
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization also bent on the destruction of the Jewish state?
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization.
Okay, so Israel's been hit in the last few weeks by Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, dedicated to their destruction. And you're telling me you're going to tell them how to fight the war and what they can and can't use when everybody around them wants to kill all the Jews? And you're telling me that if we withhold weapons in this fight, the existential fight for the life of the Jewish state, it won't send the wrong signal? Do you still think it was a good idea, General Austin, to get out of Afghanistan?
I support the president.
Yeah, I think you do. I think it was a disastrous decision. If we stop weapons necessary to destroy the enemies of the state of Israel at a time of great peril, we will pay a price. This is obscene. It is absurd. Give Israel what they need to fight the war they can't afford to lose. This is Hiroshima and Nagasaki on steroids.
Senator Murphy, you're clear. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you both. Thank you for your service to the country. It's pretty stunning to me how this country and our allies fail to learn recent history lessons. Those recent history lessons in both Afghanistan and Iraq tell us that there are substantial, grave limitations to the ability of military force to eliminate a terrorist threat. In fact, history tells us that the application of overwhelming military force can, in fact, grow terrorist threats, not shrink them. Mr. Secretary, you've said today that Israel has the right to defend itself. The United States supports Israel's right to defend itself. I agree. But if Israel's strategy is making it more likely, not less likely, that future terrorist attacks will occur, then it is not an effective strategy. And so it's all well and good to get angry about a conversation the United States is having with Israel over the right strategy to defeat terrorism, but we have lots of experience in failed strategies. The National Intelligence Estimate, released just earlier this year, said this, that the Gaza crisis has galvanized violence by a range of actors around the world, and while it is too early to tell, it is likely that the Gaza conflict will have a generational impact on terrorism, a generational impact on terrorism. Both Al-Qaeda and ISIS, inspired by Hamas, have directed supporters to conduct attacks against Israeli and U.S. interests. Here's my question. How do we apply the lessons that we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan as a means of helping Israel understand how to defeat Hamas? And what is your assessment of whether this campaign is, in the long run, going to decrease the ability of Hamas or follow-on organizations to recruit and retain strength and the ability to hurt Israel and the United States?
Thanks, Senator. We've said all along that Hamas does not equal the Palestinian people. They are not one and the same. And what we learned, to your point, key lesson there is that you have to protect the people, the civilians in the battle space. Otherwise, you create more terrorists going forward. So it's not only a moral imperative, but it's also a strategic imperative that you protect civilians. And so, and the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can do both, and we know how to do that. And so, in terms of the lessons learned, the kinds of things that we would endeavor to pass along, those are the things that we continue to have a dialogue on. But there have been far too many civilian casualties in this battle space, and I think we should do everything possible to ensure that we're protecting for the civilians and providing for their welfare, humanitarian assistance.
I think you are right that there is a strategic and a moral reason to care about the number of civilian casualties in Gaza, even if you don't care about the moral consequences of 13,000 children dead. You should care about the strategic consequences of providing continued bulletin board recruiting material to the very organizations that we're trying to destroy. Mr. Secretary, let me do a hard turn here on a subject really important to U.S. national security, but also to my state. As you know, this budget downgrades our commitment to building Virginia-class submarines from 2 to 1 a year. We made a big mistake in the 1990s when we hollowed out the submarine industrial base. We went from having 12,000 employees at Electric Boat down to about 1,500, and it took us a decade or more to scale back up when we realized we really needed these submarines. How can we look at the request for only one Virginia-class submarine in FY25 as anything but a pretty enormous step back for our industrial base? I'm really worried about our ability to be able to deliver what we know we need, which is 2 Virginia-class submarines and keeping the Columbia-class on time. I just worry that you can't do that if you take this big, even if it's just a 1 year, but a big step back in commitment to the Virginia program.
Thanks, Senator. So the choices are to increase the backlog by putting more demand on the system, or invest more in the industrial base. And that's the approach that we've taken. We asked you for, in 23 and 24, we asked you for $1.9 billion to invest in the industrial base, sub-industrial base. For this budget, we're asking for $4 billion. The supplemental gives us $3.3 billion, and the Australians are also investing in the submarine industrial base, our submarine industrial base. So as I have talked with industry leaders, we have talked about how we go about recruiting more people, increasing strengths in the supply chains. And so that work is ongoing and needs to be done, but we have to increase the capacity. And I know there's arguments both ways in terms of the demand versus versus investing in the capacity. But they believe, and I believe that we'll get there, but we just need to do more in terms of capacity. So
I appreciate that $4 billion investment. It's significant, but that has to be an immediate pathway to get us back on track to be building those 2 Virginia classes a year. Look forward to working with you on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Homan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, do you believe that Israel has to fully defeat Hamas so that they don't come back and have another attack like October 7th?
I do believe that Hamas has to be defeated, yes. And the goal of the Israeli leadership, as stated by them, is to destroy Hamas.
Okay, then if they need to be fully defeated, then won't giving them precision weapons like Boeing's joint attack, direct attack munitions, and small diameter bombs help them fully defeat Hamas with less collateral damage, with less impact on civilians? Those precision weapons will help them fully defeat Hamas with less impact on the civilian population in Gaza. So why wouldn't we go ahead and get them those weapons just as fast as we can?
I tend to agree with you. You need precision guided munitions of the right type. And that's why we just recently provided small diameter bombs to Israel.
But clearly, it was the intent of Congress to get Israel that assistance. And so we're watching very closely that you get that to them as expeditiously as possible so they can fully defeat Hamas, so Hamas doesn't regenerate and do the same kind of attack that they did on October 7th. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I would also agree with the point that we need to do everything we can to protect civilians in the battle space. So that precision that you talked about is really, really important. So some types of munitions are better suited than others. But we really would like to see that begin to happen in terms of fewer casualties, fewer civilian casualties, and more precise.
Do you agree or not that we need to get them the assistance to fully defeat Hamas? Do you agree with that or not?
And we have been doing that from the very beginning.
Do you agree with that or not?
I do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I want to talk to you about Sentinel. Given the incredible threat from China and Russia and the incredible buildup we're seeing, particularly in China, with their nuclear arsenal, and given the Nunn-McCurdy review, one, are you fully committed to modernization of our nuclear forces, to the Sentinel program? And how are you going to do, and what are you going to do to keep that on track?
Well, as you know, our nuclear portfolio and our nuclear triad is key to our strategic deterrence. And so in this budget, there's $49 billion that is focused on that portfolio. For Sentinel, there's $3.7 billion. As the Air Force works through its Nunn-McCurdy, we want to continue down the path to modernize, because this leg of the triad, Sentinel, is the one that's available 24/7 and to provide that strategic deterrence in addition to the other two legs of the triad.
Are you fully committed to doing what you need to keep it on track?
I am.
And do you feel that you have the plan in place right now to do that?
Well, this is where the Air Force is working through the Nunn-McCurdy, and I've not gotten a brief from them, but I do know that the Air Force is focused on this based on my past experience and based on how important I know it is for the nation.
Is there something that you would want to see from this committee that would help you do that?
Well, I think the collaboration with the committee and consistent funding, on-time funding will be helpful to move forward. And then just constant dialogue to figure out where we can take out any slack to ensure we get the capability.
Well, our chairman is from Montana, the home of Malmstrom, and of course, we have the Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and Senator Barrasso and in F.E. Warren. I know that we're committed to helping you. So if there's something else that needs to be done, we want to know what it is to keep that program on track.
We'll definitely let you know.
Okay, thank you very much. And then the last question I would have, Mr. Chairman, for you is, how are you making sure that we have enough ISR with this, development for space-based assets? And I know it's critically important. We're very committed to funding that and advancing it. I'm concerned that you're not doing enough to maintain an ISR capacity. What are you doing to make sure that you have the ISR assets that all of the forces, not just Air Force, but all of our forces are asking for?
You know, as a joint warfighter, and having been serving jointly, I've been focused not just on the Air Force, but all the services. And when I look at ISR in particular, it's the capability that not only do we have from the air breathing assets, but it's how we bring in ISR from our maritime assets, how we bring it in, and particularly from our space assets, and how we transition. I'd also highlight the fact that how cyber plays a key role in some of our ISR as well. And so having the capability to bring that all together and using our digital tools to take all the information we get from whatever ISR platform, that's what we're really, that's where the focus is. How do you take that information to things we can analyze to determine intent? And it's not just, I know our commands are focused on particular platforms, but it's the combination of platforms and capability and how we bring that together that's going to make us most effective as a joint force.
Well, you and I have worked on this for some time, and you've had a good common sense approach to it. And so we want to continue working with you on it. But what you do in ISR affects every single force in the DoD, not just Air Force. It's vitally important. So I want to encourage your continued focus on making sure that you have adequate ISR, and we'll work with you to do that. But very important.
Actually, having an ISR actually makes my job easier. So I'm completely focused on ensuring we have that capability.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I got a couple more questions, and I thank you guys for your patience in going through the order here. We've had good participation today. Look, I've repeatedly called upon Secretary Mayorkas and President Biden and Congress to step up and fix what's going on the southern border. It's not sustainable at all, and it's unacceptable. DHS continues to rely on DoD support at the southern border to make sure that they're doing what they can do. But once again, I don't see any funding in this budget for DoD personnel for those operations. So, Mr. Secretary, a couple things. Number one, how many troops are serving currently on the southern border?
There's about 2,500. on
Yeah.
the border.
And how does DoD cover these costs?
As we always have out of our operating budget.
And so what does that mean operationally? Who gets shorted?
Of course, that means that there's something else that we're not doing because of that support. So, but it's important that we do everything we can to support DHS in its effort to in its work on the southwest border. We've been doing that for 19 of the last 23 years. The price tag's been about $4 billion. But again, we are supporting agency, and DHS is a lead agency. And again, it's important to our country, and we're going to do what's required to support.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Secretary. Do you agree with my perspective that the administration needs to do more to secure the border, and we shouldn't have to depend upon the military to do that?
We should or should not?
Should not have to depend upon the military for that.
I could not. I agree, but if we're required to assist, then certainly we will continue to do so.
I want to go back to
And the president agrees with the fact that there's more that should be done, and that's why when you came up with this bipartisan approach,
Yep.
That was very much supported.
Yeah, well, no doubt about it. Congress dropped the ball on that because that would have changed things dramatically, but some folks want it to be used as a political tool when in fact we ought to be working for the betterment of the country, not for Democrats or Republicans. I want to talk to you a little bit about Sentinel. Senator Hoeven brought this up. I'm frustrated. Secretary Kendall is recused himself for reasons, by the way, that I understand members of Congress who've created that problem. Northrop Grumman is doing what they can do. The Air Force is doing what they can do. Bechtel's doing what they can do. You guys have educated me very, very well on what's going on in this world and why this is a dangerous time. Yet I don't get the sense of urgency on Sentinel, particularly with the ground-based missiles that we have. We've got timelines, and quite frankly, we had a general in front of the VA Milcon Committee and General Green, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, General Green, and I asked him about timelines. Great guy, incredibly talented, could not even give me the year they anticipated starting this program. And I get it. There's studies going on, there's cost issues, and it's going to cost a lot. General Brown, can you give me any sort of, this is in your old job, front and center, and it's still in your new job too, by the way, but can you give me any idea on if I should be concerned about the timeline continuing to slip on the ground-based nuclear missile Sentinel project that I think is critically important as a deterrent moving forward in this world in the 21st century?
Well, Senator, I don't necessarily have the details, but I think for all of us, we all should be, I get concerned we don't get capability to the hands of our war fighters or things that are very important to our strategic deterrence. And so my focus as a chairman, and same as when I was the Air Force chief, is to ensure we're doing everything we can to make sure we bring that capability forward. And so I am focused and want to make sure that we continue to do that. So I do have, like you, have some concerns. I want to understand where we are and what the things we need to do to ensure we bring that capability forward as quickly as possible.
We're here to help.
Yes, sir.
But I will tell you that unless we start getting timelines and goals and everything set up, there's going to be a lot of pressure being put on people because, quite frankly, I do not think it's acceptable to be continuing to say, don't worry about this, it's coming. The truth is we've been at this for a while, and I haven't seen it coming. Seen it progressing to the point it needs to. Senator Collins, I'll get to you. I want to get to Senator Murkowski for her first round. Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologize. We're all jumping in between multiple appropriations subcommittees this morning. But gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership. I know that there's probably been a great deal of discussion here this morning, as there is just generally about the threats from China, Iran, the conflicts in Ukraine. But I feel it's important to always underscore that we never take our eye off of North Korea, who just last month, of course, fired missiles in the direction of Japan, one of our strongest allies in the Pacific. It was Prime Minister Kishida who noted just shortly after the most recent launch from North Korea that their frequent launches threaten the peace and safety of not only Japan, but the region and the international security. So I just make this statement to let you know that it's something that we're certainly engaged and tracking, and I know you are as well. But I want to ask you, Mr. Secretary, not about North Korea, but a focus on the Arctic. Your FY25 budget overview states that the goal of this year's budget request is to, quote, develop a monitor and response approach in the Arctic. So I read that to suggest that this is a passive approach in the Arctic, which I think would be a strategic critical error. As you know, we're already behind, we're under-equipped when it comes to assets. When you look at what Russia has with their icebreaker fleet of about 50 vessels, in the United States here, we have barely 2. Mr. Secretary, you've been to the state, you've had really strong statements noting that the United States has to project power in both regions while also serving as a front line in the Homeland Defense mission. So you're saying all the right things, but I'm concerned about the wording here. And I would ask for you to just expand on what a monitor and respond approach in the Arctic really entails.
Thanks, Senator. United States is an Arctic nation, and of course, this is a strategically important region to us for a number of reasons. And we're going to continue to take actions to prioritize the region. You're going to soon see us release a new Arctic strategy, and that strategy will account for the changes in the environment, the warming climate, the fact that we have, new members of NATO that I think will be very helpful in working with us going forward. We see each of the military services making investments in their ability to operate in that environment. We also see our combatant commander, NORTHCOM, partnering with Canada to modernize NORAD. And so, again, it's important to us. You know that we conduct some pretty significant exercises like Northern Edge up there, and every time we do that, we learn a lot more about ourselves and the challenges that are facing us. But again, the Arctic will remain important to us, and we'll account for that in the new strategy that we're going to release.
Well, I thank you for that, and would suggest also, and when we factor it into the strategy, that again, when we look at the budget, making sure that it is resourced to demonstrate that, whether it is in the proper Arctic equipment, cold weather service, incentive programs, and the like. Very quickly to you, General Brown, as you well know, Alaska is in a pretty unique position because it executes a NORTHCOM mission, but with PACOM assets, and it creates some operational control issues as NORTHCOM and 11th Air Force commanders are unable to effectively utilize their assets in a timely and efficient manner. Every 11th Air Force commander I've worked with has expressed the concerns about the structure and that it doesn't prioritize homeland defense, making their job a little bit more harder. I'm sure you're tracking this issue. I know that the proposal is currently being considered within the Pentagon. I don't know if you have any updates that you can provide now or at a later point in time, but it is something that, again, we're looking to address. I had a conversation with General Guillot just yesterday.
Well, I'm having served as a commander of Pacific Air Force, I'm very familiar with the operational challenges associated with our forces in Alaska that are both focused on NORTHCOM, NORAD missions, as well as Indo-PACOM missions. I'm not aware of a direct proposal, but I have talked to General Guillot as well. And just based on experience, I know it's something we got to take a look at to continue to make sure that we don't create unnecessary seams, to make sure we can respond in whichever way the nation requires with the capabilities that are stationed there in Alaska.
Appreciate your review of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, Congress has overwhelmingly and with bipartisan support indicated its support for providing weapons and other assistance to Israel. These funding bills have passed with 70 to 80 votes in the Senate and by similar bipartisan margins in the House. You said in response to a question today that no final decision has been made. I would suggest the delivery of weapons to Israel is a decision. And it's a decision that most members of Congress would take issue with. I was reading a report from John Spencer, who is the chair of urban warfare studies at West Point. And he said, quote, Israel has implemented more measures to prevent civilian casualties in urban warfare than any other military in the history of war. So that leads me to ask you, what conditions is the administration asking Israel to fulfill before releasing these weapons that the administration has deliberately delayed despite strong congressional support for this assistance?
Well, thanks, Senator. Well, first of all, it's about having the right kinds of weapons for the task at hand. And a small diameter bomb, which is a precision weapon that's very useful in a dense built-up environment, it's helpful. But maybe not so much a 2,000-pound bomb that could create a lot of collateral damage. And so we've been very clear that, that we have to do more to, or Israel needs to do more to protect the civilians in the battle space. And we wanted to make sure that, that we saw a plan to move those civilians out of the battle space before executing any kind of ground combat operation. And we would also like to see them do more precise operations. Now, you know, I don't doubt that they have some very good policies, and they do. But it's important to make sure that we're following the policies. And so we've been having conversations about this. And so we think it's imperative that we do more to protect civilians in the battle space. And that's the real issue.
And I would just suggest to you that it is Hamas that has its military operations under hospitals, under schools, concealed in civilian areas, and is using our hostages, American hostages, Israeli hostages, and innocent Palestinian civilians as human shields. I think we need to remember and always remind ourselves that it was Hamas that massacred 1,200 Israelis. It wasn't the Israelis that started this conflict. And I'm just very concerned that we not try to micromanage Israel's right to defend itself against a terrorist group backed by Iran. Let me just quickly go to one other issue, and that is, I know that the national security strategy focuses on great power competition with China. However, the most imminent threat to the U.S. homeland and our citizens abroad, as well as our allies, may well be the reconstituted terrorist factions that have grown since our abandonment of Afghanistan. And to follow up on the chairman's point, according to one DHS official cited in a Washington Post report, more than 10,000 migrants from Central Asian countries have entered into the United States in the past year, some of whom have crossed the border illegally. So is the Department of Defense also keeping its eye on the terrorist threat, which I believe is, as the FBI director has said, blinking red, and working with our intelligence community?
Absolutely, Senator, we are. You know, I meet routinely with the director of the CIA and the director of national intelligence and discuss, you know, our assets and resources that we have that are focused on collecting on these groups. And I remind you that we were the country that warned both Iran and Russia of a pending attack. And so we couldn't do that if we didn't have the visibility that we have. Now, it's not perfect, and we will continue to work to do everything we can to make sure that we have every sensor available helping us here. So.
Thank you.
Senator Moran.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, thank you. General, the Air Force recently awarded a contract for the new Survivable Airborne Operations Center, SAOC, to replace the E-4, the Doomsday. Would you, General, highlight for this committee the importance of this aircraft in the event of a national emergency or destruction of ground command and control centers?
Well, it's designed to support our nation on our worst day, on a major attack on our nation. And so it's very important that it's not only for command and control and for the leadership of the nation, but also for our nuclear command and control as well. So it plays a key role to provide the president and our national leadership options to continue to operate when we have any type of crisis or contingency.
What's the reason there needs to be a replacement of the current aircraft?
Just based on age. And one of the things we have to pay attention to not only for this particular platform, but for, I would say, all of the platforms we have within the department is to ensure that we actually have a viable platform that's we can sustain from a maintenance standpoint, because at some point it gets more costly to maintain than to move into a new capability. I would also say technology. As technology advances, we want to make sure we have the most advanced capabilities that the nation has to offer in the platforms that we use, not only for our command and control, but also for our warfighters.
Thank you, General. Secretary Austin, the Bipartisan Strategic Posture Committee report recommended fully and urgently executing the U.S. nuclear modernization program of record, including the replacement of all delivery systems. Can you highlight, please, some of the key successes related to modernization of our strategic delivery system?
Yeah, well, in this forum, I'll say that, again, we're asking you in this budget for some $49 billion to continue to invest in all three legs of the triad. We've requested to this point some $149 billion, and that money is being put to use to upgrade our capabilities across the board. So as we look at the threat, though, going forward, Senator Moran, you know, the threat that we face today is clearly not the threat that we were facing 10 years ago. And it won't be the same 10 years from now. So this is a kind of a changing challenge, and we have to keep pace with that. And so we anticipate that going forward, there'll be more changes that'll have to be made, and, you know, as our adversaries get more capability.
Thank you. Thank you both.
I want to thank you for being here, gentlemen. We appreciate you. We appreciate the testimony you've given here today and the answers to the questions. Senators may submit additional written questions, and we ask you to respond to those questions in a reasonable amount of time. Special thank you, even though you didn't say one word, Mike McCord, thank you very, very much. You were a critical component of making all this stuff work, and I want to recognize your good work. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to engage with this subcommittee throughout the year in multiple forums.
Yeah, absolutely. This subcommittee is going to reconvene on Wednesday, May 15th at 10 a.m. to hear from the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Service Acquisition Executives. As of right now, we stand in recess.